Star Trek knows it. Captain Kirk's death really did let the hero down. Captain Kirk's death let the iconic hero down, and Star Trek knows it. After a lifetime of adventure as captain of the Enterprise, Kirk was killed in Star Trek: Generations. For years, fans speculated on what Kirk's death might actually look like, but when it finally happened, segments of fandom were outraged. While the initial anger settled, the debate rages on, and Star Trek Lower Decks 4 chimes in on the issue. Star Trek Lower Decks #4 is written by Ryan North and drawn by Jack Lawrence. The Cerritos initiated a warp bubble that accidentally began a chain reaction in another universe that would destroy it. 2 aliens from that dimension come aboard the ship, seeking revenge. Captain Freeman convinces them to let the crew find a solution, but they are unable to do so. As Freeman tries to get back on the aliens' good side, Mariner invokes Captain Kirk's belief in a no-win scenario, saying that until he fell off a bridge, he had a good streak going. Captain Kirk is an absolute legend both in the Star Trek universe and in pop culture as a whole, and fans felt this should have dictated how he died. Captain Kirk is an absolute legend both in the Star Trek universe and in pop culture as a whole, and fans felt this should have dictated how he died. Kirk saved the Federation many times, be it from VGR Klingons or a probe that only talks to whales. He was an exemplary officer who led by example and inspired absolute confidence in his crew. He in turn inspired them, and many went on to become command officers. With his record, many Star Trek fans felt Kirk should have died in a blaze of glory, saving the galaxy one last time. Mariner's joke keeps with Star Trek Lower Decks' gentle skewering of the franchise, but also points to an uncomfortable truth: Kirk did not get a good death. As seen in 1994's Star Trek Generations, Kirk was trapped in an extra-dimensional nexus for 70-plus years before being rescued in the 24th century by Captain Jean-Luc Picard. The 2 Enterprise captains team up to stop the film's villain, Dr. Saran, from destroying a nearby planet. During the confrontation, Kirk is hit by Saran's phaser, and he falls from a bridge. Captain Kirk took his last breath in the presence of Picard. Yet by dying with Picard at his side, Captain Kirk managed to avoid a deep-seated fear of his, that he would die alone. Kirk very much believed this would be his fate, expressing it several times throughout the franchise. There was no rational reason for Kirk to think he would die alone, but it was a belief that persisted. While Captain Kirk's death may not have lived up to fan expectations, he did not die alone, which potentially takes some of the sting out of his death. Captain Kirk's death in Generations, while disappointing to some, was far more realistic. There is an expectation in pop culture that great heroes like Kirk die as they live, saving lives and saving the world. Movies, television, and literature are rife with examples of this trope, and many thought it would apply to Captain Kirk. In the real world, good people die senseless deaths. However, this is not a set rule, and one that begs to be subverted. While Kirk's death was not entirely in vain, Saran was defeated. It still felt like a huge letdown and was viewed as senseless by many in 1994, and still is today. In the pantheon of science fiction, few figures loom as large as Captain James Tiberius Kirk. William Shatner's confident swagger, clipped delivery, and rakish charisma helped shape a pop culture archetype, the fearless leader who boldly goes where no one has gone before. Yet when Kirk met his ultimate fate on the silver screen, not with the crackle of phasers or the poetry of sacrifice, but with an awkward tumble off a rickety bridge in Star Trek Generations 1994, fans were left with one unshakable sentiment: the hero deserved better. It wasn't supposed to end that way. Kirk's legacy had been built over decades through original series episodes, animated adventures, and a string of movies that, despite budget constraints and evolving cultural tides, managed to capture the optimism and curiosity of Gene Roddenberry's vision. Kirk was a man who faced down godlike aliens, outwitted Romulan commanders, and even negotiated peace with Klingon chancellors. He survived because he thought faster, acted bolder, and, in some cases, cheated death itself. Never forget the infamous Kobayashi Maru scenario. So when Generations positioned him to die not in a blaze of glory, but under collapsing scaffolding, it felt jarringly mundane. The dissonance between Kirk's mythos and his demise wasn't lost on Star Trek itself. Over the years, as the franchise evolved, with the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and modern iterations like Discovery and Strange New Worlds, writers and creators began to subtly acknowledge what many had felt in 1994. Captain Kirk's death had undersold the legend. Let's be clear. Star Trek isn't a franchise afraid of death. Spock's sacrifice in The Wrath of Khan remains one of the most poignant moments in science fiction cinema. Data's final act in Nemesis carries weight, as does Benjamin Sisko's ambiguous departure in Deep Space Nine. But Kirk's death lacked narrative cohesion. Even Patrick Stewart, who shared the screen with Shatner in Generations, later admitted in interviews that the scene didn't give Kirk the gravitas he merited. His end felt accidental rather than inevitable. The original plan for Generations hinted at more grandeur. In early drafts, Kirk would have been shot in the back by the villain Sauron, played with sinister charm by Malcolm McDowell. But test audiences balked at the randomness of a hero's assassination. The rewrite, the now infamous bridge collapse, was meant to feel more purposeful. Yet, in trying to fix one problem, the filmmakers stumbled into another. A fall from a broken walkway lacked not just spectacle, but thematic resonance. Since then, Star Trek has subtly worked to correct Kirk's send-off. J.J. Abrams' Star Trek reboot 2009 reintroduced a young, fiery James Kirk Chris Pine, whose brashness recalled the best of Shatner's portrayal. In giving the character a new lease on life in an alternate timeline, the franchise seemed to say, "We're not done celebrating Kirk's spirit just yet." Even more overtly, Star Trek Picard Season 3 2023 featured a brief but telling moment when the remains of Captain Kirk were discovered in the Daystrom Station's vault, a tongue-in-cheek nod to fans who always hoped the death scene wasn't the final word. But more importantly, Star Trek's ongoing reverence for leadership archetypes in the Kirk mold, characters like Pike in Strange New Worlds or Burnham in Discovery, underscores how deeply Kirk's ethos remains embedded in the franchise's DNA. The daring, unrelenting optimism Kirk championed hasn't faded. If anything, it's been reinterpreted through more nuanced, diverse captains who carry his mantle forward. Kirk's unsatisfying demise also speaks to a broader phenomenon in long-running franchises. How do you end the story of an iconic figure who, by design, is larger than life? Star Wars wrestled with similar questions when closing out Han Solo and Luke Skywalker's arcs. Indiana Jones faced criticism for his Twilight adventures. Fans are often torn between wanting their heroes to live forever and craving the closure that a definitive ending provides. Kirk's death, as clunky as it was an early example of the difficulties inherent in that balancing act. And yet, here we are 3 decades later, still debating it. That longevity itself speaks volumes. Kirk's final words, "It was fun," have been interpreted both as a bittersweet farewell to adventure and a metatextual wink from Shatner to the audience. But even those who defend the line as charmingly understated can't deny it left the door ajar for something more fitting. Kirk's life was more than just fun. It was monumental, transformative, historic. If Star Trek knows anything, it's that no story truly ends. The ethos of exploration and courage that Captain Kirk embodied is immortal. It courses through the warp drives of every new Starfleet vessel. It echoes in every red alert, in every diplomatic negotiation. And it resonates in,